of wireless headphones like I do for the headphone jacks on our phones. You know, with the charts and the graphs and stuff. And it's worth explaining, that's extremely difficult to do consistently. You can't just line up a driver with some good mics. I have great microphones, but you kind of need a good soundproof room, a really quiet lab. That means a lot of headphone reviewing is just sharing a more anecdotal experience. I can give you my opinion. You know, these can support aptX, these support LDAC, but I like these better than this and blah, 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 blah. And that's cool when you find a reviewer whose tastes align with your own, but we haven't seen much reviewer data on codec quality. Most articles and reviews just parrot the manufacturer press releases. So if Qualcomm and Sony are making claims on performance, it would be nice if we could confirm those claims. I like numbers, and I also like fair comparisons. I mean, testing two different pairs of cans already skews the data way too much in the types of hardware each pair of headphones might use. So what we need is one device with a standard analog output that can cover multiple audio codecs. After reviewing the FiiO BTR-1K, I was pleasantly surprised by the quality on this mid-range Bluetooth and USB-C portable amp. So I splurged on the BTR-3, which steps up to higher quality compression, supporting both LDAC and aptX HD, in addition to AAC and SBC. Running tests, recording samples, and listening to my favorite tunes. What did we find? Bluetooth audio is in better shape than I thought it was. In general, this hierarchy holds true, from best at the top to less good moving down the list. There are some important points to note though. When testing LDAC under optimal conditions, it scores an easy victory. It's really difficult to fight such a substantial data transmission advantage, even with better compression. And LDAC does properly succeed in maintaining a significant amount of my original 24 and 32-bit audio files. Instead of the normal fallback argument that humans can only hear a certain range, LDAC almost matches cabled 32-bit DACs in terms of fidelity. Playing back a simple frequency curve from 10 Hz to 30 kHz, the FiiO using LDAC was scientifically more accurate through the low end than my LG V40 connected directly to a cable. We are talking about mostly infrasound, and I happen to believe that the frequencies we can hear will be affected by frequencies of sound we can't hear, but I'll let you folks fight that out in the comments if that's any value.
White paint to mark. The IEC is already set up in this way, so you can't get that wrong. Okay, now at this point we can finalize our cables with our nice yellow shrink.
In each packet there's more energy being used, more power transmitted for each individual bit that gets sent along. And they also use another trick. Now there's a thing called Hamming codes. Now I've tried to explain this very, very quickly. If you send in ones and zeros, that's how network communications work. If a 1 gets changed into a 0 along the way, that can be disastrous because you thought you were receiving a 1, but in fact you received a 0, and then of course everything just goes horribly wrong. Now there's a way of sending
Let the music be the primary activity. This breakdown is very encouraging. If you're just soundtracking, the question that remains, what hardware is paired with the codec? If you're trying to drown out gym equipment, for example, open ear earbuds like the AirPods and Pixel Buds are really bad for you. And other manufacturers have started incorporating dual and hybrid driver designs, which can be fun for pumping up your workout playlist. When music is the primary activity, we now have much better options for enjoying a
on the drive. And so with a computer, there's always multiple ways to accomplish the same task, but that just seems like you're going out of your way.
Banana plugs on the outside, these are locking. Let's go ahead and lock them down. If you don't lock them, they get kind of a little rattly. So I got banana plugs on this side, banana plugs on this side. tech flex in the middle, heat shrink. I'll show you guys how to make that stuff in a second. So main thing you want to do whenever you're making these is you want to start off with a good material. So these are just standard two conductor wires. This is 12, this is 14. But you just want to start out with the best materials possible, because I know a lot of people, a lot of people just don't even know. So not all wires are created equal. So the reason why I'm saying that is this stuff is the same stuff as this. This is the media bridge wire. This is the in-wall rated wire. You can get this from, see that in there, but this is a 4 gauge, or not a 4 gauge, but a 4 conductor, and this is a 2 conductor. So with this, you get the black and the red wire.
And so there we have it, the truth about Bluetooth 5. The truth is that it is faster than Bluetooth 4.2. There will be some great possibilities, loads of applications that can be made for using this faster throughput, and yet with still that low battery usage. However, don't expect 4 times the distance coverage with Bluetooth 5 using that 2 megabit per second connection. If you want the long connections, then you have to put the Bluetooth has to be in a special mode, which they call coded, because of that forward error correction system, which allows the data to be transferred slower, but over a further distance. Now, that's great for Internet of Things, that's great for home security, that's great for home automation, but it's not the same stuff that you're going to be using when you're sending audio to a speaker or something like that. So there we go, I'm looking forward to it. Now, one thing just to mention is that actually the 2 megabit a second connection and the coded connection are not mandatory in Bluetooth 5. So actually a manufacturer can make a Bluetooth 5 piece of equipment with only the 1 megabit per second connection, just like Bluetooth 4.2, but it has to understand all of the Bluetooth 5 protocols, which includes the expanded advertisement packets, which I talked about in my other Bluetooth video, and that's great for beacons and so on. But actually
and decoding audio or video that has been compressed to make the file size smaller, such as MP3 or AAC, for example. There are lots of different codecs out there for encoding and decoding audio and video to various different levels of quality with varying degrees of loss. So let's talk about why we use codecs. So there are 3 main methods of storing audio digitally. There's uncompressed, there's lossless compression, and then there's lossy compression. So there are several uncompressed formats, but the main one that most people know is WAV or .wav. Now this stores audio data as recorded with no loss.
The iPhone 7 has 2 gigabytes of RAM and the iPhone 7S has 3 gigabytes of RAM. In fact, 3 gigabytes is the most that Apple have ever put into one of their iPhones. And if you go back to last year and the year before that, you will see this trend that Android phones always seem to have more memory than iPhones. And this has led some people to say that's because Android uses more memory than iOS, and therefore Android phones need to have more RAM inside of them. Well, is that true? Let me explain. So first of all, let's just clear up one thing here. We're talking about random access memory here, RAM. Okay, that's the 4 gigabytes, maybe last year it was 3 gigabytes. We're not talking about internal storage, which might be 16 gigabytes or 32 gigabytes or even 64 gigabytes, which sometimes gets called memory because it uses what they call flash memory. So therefore people mix it up. So we're talking about RAM.
Yeah. So now you can get that off. It's gonna come with this goofy little wire. You can either cut it, burn it off, whatever you want to do with it. So now that's gone. So now you got your 4 conductors. So these are typically, what I like to do is I like to mate the black and the white together, and then I like to mate the white and the green together, but that's a little down the road. So for this purpose, what you can do is, if this is gonna be your by wiring side, this one's gonna be 4, and you're basically gonna connect 2 of these on the other side to 2. So since this is 14 gauge wire, you're gonna be making 2 14 gauge wires. If you add them together, it equals the conductor of an 11 gauge wire. So that's the reason why a lot of people do this. It's not necessarily completely necessary if you're just doing by wiring, but people just swear by it. So if you want to do it, this is how to do it. All right, so what I did is I went ahead and started doing the tech flex. So here's tech flex, right? Stuff looks kind of cool. like I said, doesn't matter what you put on the outside of it, just make sure you guys start with really good conductors, because that's the whole reason for all this. If you want to, church up your copper clad aluminum, then you're making everything look cool, which a lot of the companies they do that anyway. They're going to charge you a lot of money because, one, because this stuff takes time, and two, because you can't verify what's in there at all. So when you're using TechFlex, when you cut it, either use a hot blade, or I recommend just cutting it with scissors and then immediately going with like.
A small amount of processing power. However, the weakness is that this is a lossy codec with a variable bitrate. Now, whilst it is theoretically capable of a maximum rate of 328 kilobits per second, a 16-bit depth, and 48 kilohertz sample rate, which actually does sound pretty good in theory, the variable nature of SBC means that this is often not achieved. Now, whilst SBC does perform pretty well on its highest quality settings, its variable nature and uneven application of standards between device manufacturers means that SBC is a rather hit or miss experience. So whilst SBC is available on all Bluetooth devices, it should really only be used when there are no other options. Now, a quick note on latency for SBC: you can expect this to be up to 250 milliseconds, but that's going to be quite variable depending on your device and also the connection strength. Now, the next codec we're going to be looking at is AAC, and those with Apple devices that use iTunes are likely to be quite familiar with the AAC codec, which is essentially an improvement on MP3, and it's Apple's codec of choice. Now, if you remember from earlier, AAC, or Advanced Audio Coding, is a lossy codec that is similar to MP3. Now, just like MP3, AAC uses a psychoacoustic modeling to reduce the file size of the audio whilst maintaining the fidelity. However, AAC is more efficient than MP3 and results in a lower bitrate. Now, AAC is actually one of the more difficult codecs to find information about, and there is quite a lot of misinformation out there. However, from what info I could find, over Bluetooth, AAC supports bit rates of up to 320 kilobits per second, although typically it's going to be no more than 256. It supports a 16-bit depth, although it seems to be capable of 24-bit as well.
I've got the red cable, so I've got a 4-port socket there, and the red cable goes out, and this is the remote. So it's upside down, but if you have a look there, you can see remote. So this is the other end of it, and from here I've then put it into a tiny little USB hub, just a little 4-port hub, because I can use 2 player on this. So I've got 2 USB cables which then go through the wall into the next door, and it means then if you're playing split screen, you can play 2 players by plugging in 2 wired controllers. So basically that's that part of it there. And then if we come round here into the back room, this is the thing that causes all the problem, this wall here, because it just blocks every single signal in the house. And if you have a look here, I've got 2 cables coming out. They're labelled up as USB kitchen, and I've got 2 female USB. So these are just extension cables, and they go from the hub next door, just straight through the wall, from that little hub to here. And now from here, it means I can plug in whatever I want, whether that would be my Xbox 360 controller and the keyboard for the Android TV, the Nintendo Pro controller, or the PS3 controllers, or the Xbox. It will all work on 2-player. What you've got to bear in mind is that if you're going a long distance...
That works great if you have some kind of allergies or medical condition. We're going to be exploring the Settings app in just a second. That's our last feature that we're going to be showing you guys. And of course, Ibotta is not a stock app, but we do recommend downloading it with our code. So if we go over here, we can see FaceTime. FaceTime allows us to make video chat calls. It works the same way as the phone application, except it is a video call. Now the calculator app allows you to do simple calculations like this, but did you know you can actually switch the calculator to a scientific calculator just by turning it to landscape mode? It's that simple. So let's switch it back.
Sometimes it's just time for the recycling heap on those, or put them into Linux and give them an easier life. So at this point, it's really up to you if you want to go to UEFI to see if you can get a little bit more life out of it. If you've been running it for the last 12 years without it, I don't think you're going to see much of an improvement personally, but that's up to you. Certain things you're not going to be able to do until you update to UEFI. If I have to explain what those things are to you, then you don't need it.
SBC, aptX, and aptX LL at the very least, if not also aptX HD. In terms of latency, you're looking at around 80 milliseconds for this, although how variable this is, I don't know. This is still a very new codec standard, and it's not supported on that many devices as of yet. Next up, we have LDAC, which is Sony's proprietary Bluetooth audio codec with high-res audio wireless certification. Now, since Android 8.0 Oreo, this has been included in the Android open source project and should now be included in most new DAC. You can expect this to be up to 220 milliseconds, again, with a usual disclaimer about variability. Next up, we're going to look at...
As far as I know, if it will downgrade to the lowest thing connected to it. So for example, I've got 4K TV downstairs, but I can't get 4K on it. A, because of my cables are not good enough, and also my...
How to build a computer, 2012 version. It's 2 hours long. Here I am. 17 years ago. You can scroll through, see if there's a certain part you want to see, like, oh, there's the close-up he was talking about of those front panel switches, the power switch, reset switch. Look how good I did that, you know? And if you don't want to watch it in a little window, you just...
Hi everyone, and welcome to Dialogue, the dialogue on analog music reproduction. Today in this video, we're going to discover all the truth on high-resolution headphones. Let's take a look. Okay, I think there are a few aspects that need to be discussed about high-resolution headphones. I'm not going to go in depth on what are the best headphones, the characteristics of that. I just want to explain a few important aspects related to the so-called high-resolution headphones.
Problems with too much sound going out of the studio and bothering people. Yeah, of course. How about sound coming in that's bothering you?
Please, let's talk about the technology. Let's congratulate Android, let's congratulate Apple for the way they're handling this very complicated task of running multiple apps at the
An iPhone 6.
Thank you. 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 Before we start with the keynote, we'd like to take a moment to talk about the tragedy that occurred yesterday in Orlando, Florida. We offer our deepest sympathies to everyone whose lives were touched by this violence. It was senseless, unconscionable act of terrorism and hate aimed at dividing and destroying.
Mattresses will help your acoustic treatment a little bit, but doesn't help the isolation at all. And not only that, they're smelly after a while, and they're really good places for like mice to live in. So that's no good either. And again, how do you find enough of them? And then they're so big that